afternoon to everyone, and thank you to everybody who has organized this event. It's never easy. I would like to welcome those of you who have come to find out what these candidates want to tell you about their views. I would like to welcome the viewers at home who are participating, and I would like to thank the candidates, most of all, because it is never easy to run for office and put yourself out there. And obviously, a participatory democracy doesn't work if we don't have candidates who run. So for all the candidates, thank you very much for making yourself available to run for public office. We are going to do several forums today, one after the other. I would encourage you to stay for all of them. If you are not going to stay for all of them, please leave in between rather than during a forum. We're going to start with the county sheriff's race, move to the 58th state representative race, then the county clerk, then the county treasurer, and then the regional superintendent of schools is running unopposed, so they will have a couple of minutes just to make a statement. The candidates' campaigns have agreed to the rules that we're going to follow this afternoon. Each of the candidates will have 1.5 minutes to make an opening statement, 1.5 minutes to make a closing statement. The order of statements and responses has been agreed by coin toss. The timers who are in the front have a very critical role to play, and they will cue the candidates at 30 seconds and again at 15 seconds. When you're at 15 seconds, please wrap up. I would ask the candidates to please address their questions and comments and answers to the audience or to myself and not to each other. Please speak into the microphones, and for those of you who are in the audience and writing questions, all the questions need to be written down. All the questions need to be appropriate to be asked of both candidates. So please don't ask something like, why did you vote for this, or why did you not vote for this, because obviously only the incumbent can answer that question. If you will hold up the question, there are question runners who will pick them up. They will be reviewed just for duplicates and to make sure that they're relevant to the race. So please confine your questions to those that are relevant to the race we are talking about. Please do not record any part of this. It is being recorded for television, and so if you feel the need to go back and review something, you can go back and review the official tape that will be broadcast. And please also turn off all cell phones. We all know how embarrassing it is to have phones going off. If any of you have any campaign materials or buttons, please take them off and cover them up. Those are not allowed at any league forums. And I would also ask you to refrain from clapping, cheering, booing, or any other kind of sign of agreement or disagreement. It is also not allowed, and it takes away time from the candidates to answer questions. Candidates, if you have a short response, please don't feel like you need to use all your time. We will simply get in more questions. With that, we will move into the forum for county sheriff. We have 25 minutes for this, and Mr. Pat will start with the opening statement.
How you doing? My name is Jason Pat. I am the Democratic candidate for Lake County Sheriff. I just wanted to thank everyone for coming here, first of all, and the League of Women Voters for putting this on. Thank you very much. Just a brief background about myself. I'm an 18-year professional, combined with my military and my law enforcement time. Currently an investigator with the Lake County Coroner's Office. Before that, I worked as a correctional officer with the Lake County Sheriff's Office. I was a military patrolman with the Great Lakes Police Department, as well as an 8-year military veteran in the United States Navy, including a tour in Iraq. Some of my recent endorsements have included the Lake County Sheriff's Fraternal of Police Lodge 66, the Waukegan Police Fraternal of Police Lodge 5, the Teamsters Lodge Local 700, which represents the correctional officers at the Sheriff's Office, as well as the sergeants and lieutenants at the Sheriff's Office. I've also been endorsed by the Illinois Gun Violence Prevention Committee. Some of the things that I want to accomplish as sheriff is bring back the canine units. Currently, the Sheriff's Office has 0 dogs, the largest law enforcement agency in the county, and there's 0 dogs to account for. I also want to clean up a lot of the corruption and problems that have been around. It's going to take some time, but it's definitely something I want to do. I understand I got to stop now.
Mr. Curran?
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Curran, and I'm your sheriff. I've been your sheriff since 2006, and I also would like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum, as well as all of you for being here this afternoon. The job of sheriff is a big one. I would submit to you it's the toughest job there is in law enforcement in the county. You have approximately 600 employees, a $70 million budget, and as Mr. Pat pointed out, there's a number of public sector unions that represent them. Prior to being sheriff, I had a career that very much prepared me for it. I was a state's attorney in Lake County for 8 years. I was an assistant attorney general supervisor in criminal division. I was a special assistant United States attorney. I was in private practice where I had civil litigation as well as criminal defense practice. And then since being sheriff, I've also held the job as the coroner of Lake County. I'm running because I believe in public service. I believe in keeping this county that I live in safe. Crime is down 8.6%. We've been under budget 8 years in a row. We've given back millions of dollars. I believe in raising the bar and making the Lake County Sheriff's Office the very best law enforcement office that it can be. That's why 30 mayors endorsed me and many others. Thank you.
Okay, we will move into the question phase of this. Again, if you have a question, please hold up your card and someone will collect it. The first question, we will begin with Mr. Pat and then Mr. Curran. Many counties are experiencing overcrowding in their jail facilities. How will you address this issue in Lake County?
Well, I think that first of all, you have to try to reduce crime even further. The jails are obviously overcrowded. A lot of the people in the jails right now are suffering from mental illness. A lot of jails now are becoming mental health facilities. As far as reducing overcrowdedness, it's something you have to work with the judges and you have to work with the courts. I mean, obviously you have to be out there enforcing crime. You can't stop enforcing crime. So that's something that you have to work together on with the other areas in the justice system.
Okay, Mr. Curran?
Jail overcrowding is a problem, and I've recognized that since day one as being sheriff. We have 5% of the world's population. We incarcerate 25% of the world's incarcerated population. I spent a week in my own jail many years ago. You all may remember that story. It was in essence to bring the spotlight on the fact that people need second chances. We need to work at recidivism throughout Lake County and throughout the larger community as well. That's why our jail has distinguished itself with approximately 300 volunteers that we bring into the Lake County Jail. This is why the media has shined the spotlight on the Lake County Jail. It's essentially the premier jail in the nation, if I would, in terms of programming and helping inmates that are currently incarcerated find the skills to be able to get out into the world and not struggle with addictions on the same level, to have the job skills that they may not have had prior to coming in. So we are continuing the fight with regards to recidivism, also with regards to mental health. We've started a committee focusing on that, and that is a very serious issue. Approximately 25% of those incarcerated suffering from an Axis 1 diagnosis, bipolar or schizophrenia. So we need to fund it in this state. Mental illness is underfunded, but we are doing everything we can. I believe in it passionately.
Thank you. The next question goes first to Mr. Curran and then to Mr. Pat. The Sheriff's Office has been involved in several multi-million-dollar lawsuits, including one for discrimination against a female deputy. How can this be prevented in the future?
The Sheriff's Office has had a lawsuit, one that was referenced with regards to discrimination. I have hired and promoted more women than they did in the first 170 years of the Lake County Sheriff's Office history. We are raising the bar. We are completely without tolerance with regards to discrimination. To me, it's something that's repulsive, and worked very hard. And to raise the bar, to change the culture of the office. And that's why, the sheriff, you keep an arm's length. And, the other one, the jail, what was done there, obviously, an inmate was dragged through the jail. What happened was we did not circle the wagons. We conducted a very thorough investigation to find out what was happening. As a result of that, numerous people were terminated, 4 officers terminated, 10 more disciplined, up to a couple hundreds of days in terms of discipline. And that's what you do. You hold people accountable. My opponent promoted a fundraiser, leave no officer behind. You want to be sheriff, you hold people accountable. That's how you prevent that from happening again.
Mr. Pat?
Well, I think that's an easy answer. You don't discriminate against people. I think that, as far as the lawsuit that you guys are referring to, it was a female who had her canine removed, and that lawsuit was lost by the sheriff's office and ultimately the taxpayers. And the quote, I'm sure we all know, is, "We want to give the boys a chance." Well, there was a female who had that dog, and she was discriminated against, and that's wrong. It's very simple. You don't discriminate against people, and you don't have those problems. Right there, you reduce the burden on the taxpayers as far as millions of dollars, and that's not acceptable. As far as the other lawsuits from the jail, you got to train your people. You got to keep your people trained. You got to keep them informed. You got to let them know what's going on. You have to keep these people up to date on the current practices. If you don't do that, you have deaths in custody. You have discrimination. So, bottom line, treat people with respect, treat people equally. You don't discriminate on someone just because they're a female or because of whatever they believe in.
Thank you. The next question goes first to Mr. Pat, then to Mr. Curran. How should the sheriff's office address the issue of heroin?
Well, heroin's obviously a big problem in Lake County. I investigate several heroin deaths myself within the past week and over the years. I think you have to just more enforcement on the streets. You get more guys out there. You get people trained as far as what heroin is, what it does. You start at the level of high school. As you get out in the schools and you educate people, what heroin will do to you, what heroin will do to your family and your career and your future. It's a terrible drug. It's a terrible addiction people have, and these people need help. But obviously we need to get the stuff off the streets. We have to be heavily involved in the trafficking that comes through Lake County. And I think, when you go back to what I talked about earlier as far as bringing those dogs back, canines are invaluable to law enforcement. They're invaluable to our community. There's things that dogs can do that humans just can't. I mean, you talk about someone, smuggling heroin or smuggling any type of narcotics in their vehicle or anything else. Myself or my opponent or anybody else here in this room can't walk by that car and sniff that out, but those dogs can. And I think that's a huge asset for us.
Mr. Curran?
Thank you. Heroin is a societal ill that's definitely on the rise, has been for some time. We had a lot of young people's lives taken as a result of heroin. Approximately 30 exclusively in one calendar year where I was the coroner. Approximately 100 total where heroin was a factor in the ultimate demise of the people that were using it. We've done a lot. I would submit to you, my office. What I did was we had a court security division had a lot of grade 1 deputies. And I knew that the county board was not going to give me more money to grow the agency. So what I did was I took those grade 1 deputies, it's the highest paid scale deputy that there is below a command, took them and put them out on the road, created a special investigations unit. This unit is out there fighting these evil narcotics. And I replaced the deputies on the road with part-time and retired personnel that are in the courts, paid substantially less. That's one of the reasons why we're much safer as a county. So you can't strictly fight the supply. We've gone off after the gangs that supply it, but we also go after the demand by getting the word out into the schools. We have a task force, an opiate task force. We're out spreading the word throughout the community. You can't mess with that drug. Very, very dangerous.
Thank you. If you have a question or you need a card, please just put your hand up and somebody will come and give you a card or take your question. The next one goes first to Mr. Curran and then to Mr. Pat. How should the concealed carry law be enforced?
Enforce the law as it's written. This is one that, I probably don't need 90 seconds on. Concealed carry is the law in the state, and I think one of the things that we have done is we've held forums throughout the county to alert people as to exactly what the law says. That way it's not a game of gotcha, you're in violation of the law, we're going to charge you with a felony, what have you, and add to the list of people that are incarcerated. No, we're out there explaining the law paragraph by paragraph, making sure that people understand it, making sure that their questions are answered. And then, from there, we're sworn to uphold the law, so we do so as asked to do.
Mr. Pat?
I'm just going to have to agree with my opponent that the law is the law right now, that in the state of Illinois you can carry concealed. And those who are lawful abiding citizens who have their concealed carry cards, who take the class, and who get certified, you allow them to carry concealed, and those who don't have it, and obviously you enforce those laws.
Okay. The next question goes first to Mr. Pat, then to Mr. Curran, and again, hold up your hands if you have cards to be picked up. What do you see as the most important issues facing the office of the Lake County Sheriff?
Well, I think morale. I think morale is a big problem right now. You have deputy sheriffs, correctional officers, you have court security officers, you have administrative staff who have never felt so terrible in their lives to go to work. They hate going to work right now because of the way that they're being treated. I work with these people on a daily basis in all realms. And, listen to these people talk. They don't want to do their jobs. A lot of them are scared to do their jobs, just for fear of being in trouble, just so, the administration doesn't look bad. So right now you have, going in as sheriff, you have to go in and clean that up. Let people know that, you have their back when they make the right decisions, and make sure that you take the politics out of the office, so that people can make these decisions.
Mr. Curran?
The most important issue right now is safety. Lake County borders Wisconsin to the north and Cook County to the south. I think anybody that watches the nightly news knows what's going on south of here. Crime is down 8.6% in Lake County. We've done that, as I said, through one of the ways we've done it is through my restructuring the court system, putting those people out on the road, targeting gangs. I was the head of gang crimes for the state of Illinois while I was in the Attorney General's office. I know about these gangs. They're a tremendous evil that are coming at our society. And make no mistake about it, essentially all of the major narcotics that are out there in distribution, and they're in our high schools, come from street gangs. We go at them with everything we can. We've gone out after gangs. Warrants are at the lowest number in recent history. There's a lot of dangerous people previously out there that had committed violent crimes, aggravated assaults, deadly weapons, and sexual assaults. They're all locked up right now. Our office led the state in DUI arrests, state sheriffs in DUI arrests. We're very safe. And he talks about morale. He's never had a command job. He's never been a sergeant. He's never been a lieutenant. He's never had any type of management experience. And you can go after that 10% that exists throughout our industries, but that's not how you can make people safer. Raise the bar, you hold people accountable.
Okay. Thank you. There's a question here, I think, to be picked up for the runner. Oh, several. Okay, thank you. The next question goes to Mr. Curran first. How do you think the medical marijuana laws will affect law enforcement issues? How will DUI and testing be handled?
I'm opposed to was opposed to medical marijuana. It is the law. My greater concern is not medical marijuana, because those were tough arguments, is broadening marijuana and legalizing it completely. And, we go down that road where it's very difficult to quantify exactly how much marijuana somebody has had. And then they get behind a wheel and it's not a good recipe for the safety of our roads, and that's really my paramount concern. So I think that, marijuana, we need to make sure that people are educated. There's dangers that people are not aware of. Its potency has increased in the last couple of decades, and as a result of that, I think that we need to be very careful of the slope we're going down.
Mr. Pat?
Well, I think that, as far as a law enforcement, point of view, when you're dealing with marijuana, obviously it's a concern if people are, are using the substance and getting behind the wheel of a car. It's obviously can be very dangerous. It can be just as dangerous as alcohol. It can be just as dangerous as lack of sleep or any other, issues that would distract your driving, texting and driving, things like that. So you have to obviously enforce that. As far as medical marijuana goes, though, I think it can be a good thing, especially for children. You're talking about, preventing seizures in small children. It's definitely, something that can help out. But, from a law enforcement perspective, you just have to make sure that the people who are using it for the medical purposes are using it lawfully and they're not getting behind the wheel of a car. They're not carrying their weapon concealed. So there's certain things you have to look out for. But, overall, you just have to make sure that everyone's vigilant.
Okay, thank you. This question goes to Mr. Pat first and then Mr. Curran. How should the sheriff's office address the medical care for prisoners in custody?
Well, the prisoners and the inmates, I'll say that we'll call them inmates. The inmates are in just as much, they deserve just medical care like anyone else does. They're still human beings. Most of them have made mistakes, but that doesn't mean that should be lacked. And I think in the past at the jail in Lake County, that's been lacking. You have an individual by the name of Levita Gomes, who essentially was not given proper medical care and was allowed no food. I shouldn't say allowed, but she refused to eat and she refused to drink for just under 2 weeks, and she wasn't given proper medical care until she pretty much died, and she ended up dying. At that point, she was taken to one of the local hospitals. So I think it needs to be stepped up. I think that as far as medical care, we need more psychologists and psychiatrists in there making rounds, because as we said before, mental health is a huge problem in our correctional facilities. And it doesn't matter where in the country you are, but especially up here in Lake County, that needs to be stepped up.
Thank you. Mr. Curran?
Thank you. I think that's a danger of somebody that offers, platitudes. There needs to be more psychologists, more psychiatrists. It's never had to balance a budget. We have about a $70 million overall budget. The jail budget is approximately $2 million. And what we have, I've lobbied in terms of health care for everything that we have. Illinois is 50th in funding for the mentally ill. And as has been pointed out, it becomes a dumping grounds. The jails throughout the state become a dumping grounds for the mentally ill, which is problematic. But in case you're not aware, our jail contracts with a health care company. It's currently Wexford Medical, and they provide the medical health care in the jail. We run the rest of it. We, in terms of making sure that it's at the very top in terms of performance, we're accredited by National Commission of Correctional Health Care. We're also accredited by American Correctional Association. We're also pursuing CLIA accreditation. I believe in this very much because these are objective bodies that come in and make sure that your policies are up to date, make sure that you're following the law, make sure that you're doing things right. And that's why Cemetery Jail is one of the top there is.
Thank you. This will be the last question before we move to closing statements, unless you all have extremely short answers to this. So this will be Mr. Curran going first and then Mr. Pat. Recently, we've seen the militarization of police forces across the country in places such as Ferguson, Missouri. Do you support these actions, and are you in favor of police in Lake County being armed in a similar manner?
It's a balancing. No, I'm not familiar. I'm not a big supporter of the over-militarization. We don't want to lose sight of the fact that we do have nuclear plants still in existence. We have the largest naval training base. We have the largest pharmaceutical companies, what have you. We're a big county, 700,000+ people, ripe for potential attacks, and we need to make sure that we're prepared. By the same token, I think what works best is community policing. Being out in the community, that's what we do very well. The Sheriff's Office is our community policing. When we're out in the neighborhoods, helping create the neighborhood watch programs, making sure that the people that live, that we work to serve and protect, they have a relationship with us and they feel comfortable as to what we're doing. I think we've done an excellent job regarding that, and that's why 30 mayors from around the county have endorsed my candidates, including the mayor in the town that he lives in and all the towns that surround the town that he lives in. So, militarization, no, we need to be very careful.
Mr. Pat?
Well, I think there's a fine balance that that we have to look at here. Obviously, we want the citizens in the county to trust their police, to trust their law enforcement agencies. At the same time, I think that we have to protect our citizens of Lake County. Now, I don't think that we should have, these 20, 30 armored tanks driving up and down the street every day, but at the same time, I think that we should have something in case you have one of these large riots. You need to have something that can get the police from one place to the other, or that if there's a large group of people held up in a bank or somewhere else, to get them safely out of there, out of harm's way. So I think you need to have some things out there to help protect the people. But as far as militarization, we have the military, we have the Navy base here, we have stuff like that. So there has to be a fine balance, I think.
Thank you. We're now going to move to closing statements from the candidates, again by coin toss. Mr. Curran will go first, 1.5 minutes, and then Mr. Pat. Thank you.
Thank you once again. It's an honor to be your sheriff. It's a job, tough job, as I said before, but it's a job that I've enjoyed. You get the opportunity to serve the people on a level that most people do not in our society. It's also a very difficult job, as I mentioned before. One thing that I would ask you is, when you look at Lake County, you look at the record for safety, crime down 8.6%. You look at the record for fiscal responsibility, millions of dollars given back, under budget every single year. You look at the record that we've had in terms of implementing programming and new task forces to direct attack the criminal elements. You look at all of those things, what we've done in terms of school safety. And you can only ask yourself the question, do you think it's by accident that we're safer? No, it's not by accident. It's through the hard work. It's through what I've been able to do. It's a tough job in terms of taking people that wanted to be in courts, that wanted to have the Monday through Friday job, and telling them, no, you need to go out on the road because that's what's in the best interest. It's not a job where you make friends when you do those types of things. I brought in some of the best law enforcement out there. And that's part of how we raise the bar. Brought in chiefs from other agencies. And as a result of that, Lake County is much safer. And I would submit to you, if I'm your sheriff, I'll continue to work for that record to make Lake County as safe as it possibly can be. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pat.
Thank you. And, once again, also thank you very much for coming. I've spent my entire life, adult life, protecting not only our country, but also serving the citizens of Lake County in a law enforcement capacity. And I want to continue to do that as your sheriff. Some of the things that have been said tonight are definitely not true. My opponent has said that I've never balanced a budget. Well, that's not true. In the military, I was the lead petty officer for a division, and I was in charge of balancing a multi-million-dollar budget. He says I had never been a sergeant, never been a lieutenant. Before elected, he wasn't either. And I got to say that I was management while in the military. I was a non-commissioned officer. He talks about millions of dollars have been given back. As far as that goes, I think the real statement is how many millions of dollars have we had to pay out as taxpayers due to lawsuits from discrimination, due to wrongful deaths. That's the millions of dollars we should be talking about. How many that we've had to give up as taxpayers, not as much as have been given back. So, I think that we need to stop the actions that have been going on in the sheriff's office. I think I'm the right person to walk in there. I've worked in the jail. I've worked on the streets. I've done investigations. I can't say the same about my opponent. And I'm asking for your vote, and that's why I believe I should be your sheriff. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. With that, we conclude this first forum. It is now 1:33, and we will start with the State Representative Forum at 1:38 precisely. We have Mr. Drury and Mr. Nierhoff, and by draw of straws, or well, actually coin toss, Mr. Drury will go first with the opening statement, and Mr. Nierhoff will go first with the closing statement. 35 minutes to the end, so Mr. Drury, if you would like to get going.
Thank you. My name is Scott Drury, and I'm proud to be at the forefront of a new era of government in Illinois. An era where Illinois government is defined by credibility and responsibility, not corruption and political expediency. An era where elected officials actually do what they say. An era where the public can once again believe in its government. Ushering in this new era of government has not been easy. It has taken courage and a thick skin, because there are many people out there who are perfectly satisfied with the status quo in Springfield, but not me. In less than 2 years, I've shown our community and the state of Illinois what good, honest government looks like. I have publicly defied the Speaker of the House, Mike Madigan. I have demanded that Illinois build its credibility by keeping its promises. I have successfully carried out my pledges to protect women's rights, fight for responsible gun laws, make our budget more transparent, and transform our criminal justice system. And while I am proud of all my accomplishments, I understand perfectly well that Illinois has a ways to go before it will be the state it could be and should be. But I am confident that as our brand of government catches on, Illinois will once again thrive and be a state that we all can believe in. Ladies and gentlemen, the new era is here, and with your support and your trust, we can make sure that it's here to stay. Thank you.
So, my name is Mark Nierhoff. I'm an obstetrician. I've been taking care of pregnant women and their babies for nearly 25 years on the North Shore. When I began my medical career, I took an oath to do no harm. I think that our elected officials should be required to take that same oath, because the policies of our elected officials are harming the people of Illinois. High taxes and regulations are driving businesses, jobs, and families out of the state. We're promising pensions to people that we cannot afford, and in the process, we're bankrupting generations to come. And our Medicaid system is unaffordable, and it fails to provide care to people who need it the most. And I witness that every day as a physician. I think it's time that we change the culture in Springfield. We don't need more career politicians in Springfield. The first vote that Mr. Drury cast when he got to Springfield was for Speaker of the House. He voted for Mr. Madigan. Mr. Drury is financially dependent on Mr. Madigan. He received nearly $250,000 from Mr. Madigan in the last election cycle. We don't need the status quo. We need a new direction in Illinois.
We're going to move to the first question, which goes to Mr. Drury first. Since the temporary income tax wasn't renewed, how should the state pay its past due bills, pensions, and interest on the state's debt? And can people in the back hear me? Thank you.
I'm sorry, can you restate the question?
Since the temporary income tax increase wasn't renewed, how should the state pay its past due bills, its pension obligations, and interest on the state's debt?
Illinois has a lot of work to do when it comes to its fiscal policies. For too long, Illinois has lied to the public about what it has to spend and what revenue is coming in. The first thing Illinois needs to do is rebuild its trust with the public by keeping its promises, and that's why I've been a proponent of rolling back the tax increases promised. In doing that, Illinois can then take a real look at what it has and what it doesn't have, and we can start making real decisions. Illinois needs to look at its overcrowded prison systems, and it needs to look at how many people it's incarcerating and the tremendous cost that it's having. Illinois needs to look at public-private partnerships and develop that business in order to bring more revenue into the state. Illinois needs to look at its Medicaid rolls because they're overcrowded, and this is people who don't belong on the rolls who are still gathering the benefits. They shouldn't be on the rolls, and Illinois shouldn't be paying for that. There's a lot that Illinois can do to make itself a credible state and pay its bills, but it can't do that by consistently lying to the public. Without trust, we have nothing, and without trust, we're all perpetually at risk. And so those are the things that Illinois needs to do to get itself back on track.
Mr. Nierhoff?
Mr. Drury is focusing on revenues. We don't have a problem with revenues. We've never had as high of revenues as we have right now. Our problem is spending. And the two major drivers of spending is Medicaid and pensions. That's where we need to focus our efforts. And with respect to spending, Mr. Drury voted for the 2014 budget, which increased spending $2 billion above 2013. He voted for a Medicaid expansion, which will cost you, the taxpayers, $2.9 billion by 2020. He voted for expanded capital spending on the Piatone Airport, which doesn't exist. And he voted against making the temporary tax increase permanent. But in his explanation, he said that the problem is that it wasn't part of a comprehensive approach. Folks, that's not the problem. We need to cut spending. High taxes are driving people out of the state. We need to cut spending. Mr. Drury still believes that inadequate revenues is the issue. That is not the issue. He has done nothing to address the major drivers of spending,
Thank
Medicaid
you.
and pensions.
Time's up. I am going to ask you all to please stick to the time limit, otherwise we have a lot of questions. We're not going to get through them. Next one, Mr. Nierhoff, you go first. What changes, if any, do you favor in the concealed carry law? And then there's a whole series of sub-questions, but they all come to the same top level, so I'm going to stop at that point.
I think the concealed carry law should be enforced as written. Period.
Thank you.
The concealed carry law is probably one of the worst pieces of legislation that I saw implemented during my first term. Under the concealed carry law that my opponent would like to see implemented, people are allowed to carry concealed weapons into our synagogues. People are allowed to carry concealed weapons into our churches. People are allowed to carry concealed guns into your home if you don't have a sign on your window. People are allowed to carry concealed weapons into family restaurants where you eat with your children. People are allowed to carry concealed weapons at our public beaches. People are allowed to carry concealed weapons in our forest preserves. This needs to be changed. We are not a society that needs to be protected from each other like the Wild West. That's why we have police. That's why we have law and order. I think one way, I guess, we could cut spending is we just arm ourselves and we don't need any guns. We don't need any police forces. But I don't agree with that. I believe that the state has a fundamental right to provide protection, which it does, and it doesn't make us safer to allow everybody to have guns around my family and my children or your families and your children.
Thank you. Next question, Mr. Drury goes first. Do you support the creation of a state-based health exchange or continuing to use the current partnership with the federal government?
I'm in support of a state-based health insurance exchange. Right now, Illinois is one of a few states that currently is part of it. It's a mixed system, partly the federal system and partly the state system. If we can control our own health insurance exchange, we can offer more options to people, we can do it more efficiently and not be as dependent on the federal government. Everybody has a right to health care. There was a comment that I voted in favor of expanding Medicaid. Absolutely I did. Because if we treat more people on the front end, make sure that they're coming in for their physicals, there's going to be less people coming into our emergency rooms with disaster situations. That's where we need to get as a society. We need to treat the sick, we need to treat the poor, and we need to do it in a dignified way. And one other thing in terms of pensions, I'm on the pension committee and was one of the people who supported the pension reform that went through. So when there's comments that I haven't done anything, I've actually been at the forefront of that issue, despite people advising me that I shouldn't take on such tough issues as a first-year representative. I dove in head first because that's the type of representation that this district needs. I keep my promises, I do what I say, and that's what I believe the 58th district wants from its representatives.
Thank you, Mr. Nierhoff.
Regarding expanding the Medicaid program, a recent audit of Medicaid demonstrated that 40% of the people that are currently on Medicaid don't qualify for Medicaid. Mr. Drury expanded that program dramatically without first taking steps that your taxpayer dollars are well spent. And that system needs to be reformed so that people can get good health insurance which will allow them to see the physicians they need to see. with respect to the healthcare exchange, there is no virtue in our state putting up that exchange. If we don't do it, the federal government will. And if we do it, who's going to pay for the maintenance of that exchange? Who's going to pay for the upkeep of that exchange? We're talking about many millions of dollars a year. Who's going to pay for that? There's been no allowance made for that. So I would say, no, there's no virtue in our assuming the control of that healthcare exchange. And number two, with respect to Medicaid, it's a 1960s program which has never been updated. Let's update it. Let's bring it up to speed. Let's get the people off the rolls that don't belong on it, and let's get it so that the people who really need the insurance get it.
The next question is to Mr. Nierhoff first. Do you support cutting pension benefits to current retirees? If not, how will retirees' pensions be funded? Mr. Nierhoff.
No, I don't support cutting pension benefits to current retirees. I think we should keep the promises that we have made to people. So I think the fundamental problem is the type of program we're providing, which is a defined benefit program. Part of pension reform, real pension reform, would be to go to a defined contribution program. The reason for that is the monies need to be in control of our public employees, and they should not be in the control of our elected officials, because they have clearly demonstrated that they are not responsible in caring for those monies. Here's the option. Either you put your money in an account that you have sole control over, or you get an IOU from Mr. Drury and Mr. Madigan. It's your choice. And regarding recurrent retirees, no, I think we should keep all of the benefits that we have promised them. I do think that we should look at COLAs. COLAs is at 3% compounded annually. The average pension for a person who has been in the system for a lifetime is almost $75,000. If the COLA is means tested, the people who are making less money will get some support.
Mr. Drury.
I just want to make clear what that statement actually meant. My opponent says he doesn't want to cut benefits for retirees, but he wants to change the cost of living adjustment, which is a benefit to retirees. Currently, the benefit is 3% compounded. As part of the pension reform that we passed, we made adjustments to that because it's the biggest driver of our pension debt in the state. So what my opponent wants is to say, I'm not going to cut the benefits, and also to say, I'm going to cut the benefits. The other thing in the statement is that we should not cut the benefits for retirees, but we should starve the system of all of its funding because we're now going to go to a defined contribution plan, a 401k. Well, if the pension system has no new money coming in, then there's not going to be any money paying for the current retirees. So what the plan is on this side is to starve the pension system so that retirees actually have no retirement at all. I think that it's morally wrong. I think it's wrong to be disingenuous about the way it's presented to people, and it's not the type of government I stand for. I've taken tough votes in front of people. I have retired teachers who work on my campaign, who work in my legislative office, and I have to face them with the votes that I've taken. But one thing I've always done is I've been honest with them, I've treated them with respect, and I've told them my reasons for what I'm doing, and they keep coming back to help support me because that's the type of government that they want. We're sick of the doublespeak in Illinois, and we don't need it anymore.
Next question goes to Mr. Drury first. What is your position on term limits?
I support term limits. I think my understanding is that the public wants term limits, and it will make them believe in government again and make them believe government is working on their side. So we should have them. I don't think it's going to be the ultimate fix for all of the problems in the state, but if that's what the public wants, we should find a way to get there. One of the first pieces of legislation I proposed when I came to the office was a constitutional amendment to have term limits on the Speaker of the House, because he's been the Speaker of the House for over 30 years. And so that was one of my first proposals. Did it see the light of day? Absolutely not. But that doesn't mean you don't try. I also had proposals to limit the Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate to make sure that's their only employment, so that they don't have outside law firms that they're making money from. These are proposals that came from me because I believe this is what the public wants, this is what's going to get the public to believe in government again, and I will continue to fight for you and not for the political people in Springfield.
Mr. Nierhoff?
Yes, I support term limits. 8 years sounds reasonable to me. I agree with Mr. Drury. Mr. Madigan took office in the Illinois House when Richard Nixon was president. He has been Speaker of the House every year since 1983, save 2. And that's in large part why we are where we are today. And any proposal that comes from that side of the aisle is not going to see the light of the day for any foreseeable future. And that's why I said, if you send Mr. Drury back to the House, he's going to vote for Mr. Madigan for Speaker of the House. And we'll be right where we are today. The same old routine, and nothing will be solved. And Mr. Drury is in Mr. Madigan's pocket. Mr. Drury received almost $250,000 from Mr. Madigan. Are you trying to tell me that he's really independent? I don't buy it.
The next question goes to Mr. Nierhoff first. What do you feel are the most challenging environmental issues faced by the residents of Illinois? Do you feel the state legislature is working to meet these challenges?
I think that we are doing well as a state overall environmentally. Quite honestly, I think the greatest challenge we face is to decide what we're going to do regarding fracking, because we're sitting on a gold mine of energy. And the question is, are we going to take advantage of it? And how can we do that safely? Environmentally, that's really the issue that we need to address.
Mr. Drury, sorry.
Illinois could be doing a much better job on the environment. In 2013, Illinois passed a bill, it's a fracking bill, and for those of you who aren't familiar with fracking, that's when gas companies inject toxic chemicals into the earth in order to extract gas, and then there's more toxic pollutants that come out with the gas. We passed a law that doesn't provide enough protections for the earth, and once we give up that resource, the earth, we can't get it back. And so there's a fundamental difference that we have there. Illinois could do a lot better job with the renewable portfolio standard in order to implement green energy. We've been working on that for 2 years. I've been part of a select roundtable that is meeting with the energy companies to try to get them to commit to their obligation to implement more solar, more wind, more green energy to make our state a better place. So Illinois could be doing a lot better. Our Department of Natural Resources is underfunded and doesn't implement the appropriate regulations that it should be. Illinois EPA does not do nearly enough to enforce the environmental regulations that our state has. We have a toxic dump sitting in Highland Park that's leaking vinyl chloride over Lake Michigan, and I've been fighting with Illinois EPA to stop that from happening, but that hasn't been done. So to say that Illinois is doing a great job on the environment is really just out of touch with what's going on.
The next question goes to Mr. Drury first. What is your position on the proposed Ileana Highway?
I'm opposed to the Ileana Highway. This is a highway that they want to build. It's a tollway, actually, that they want to build in the south suburbs that supposedly will bring more business in from Indiana into Illinois. The studies don't bear that out, and actually to build that tollway, we would have to go through some very protected wetlands, getting back to the environment. And so I think that to move forward with this project would be irresponsible of the state.
Mr. Nierhoff?
To be very candid with you, I don't know a lot of details about the proposal for the Ileana Highway. So I don't know that I can adequately answer that question.
Okay, the next question goes to Mr. Nierhoff first. And can you still hear all of us at the back? Good, thank you. What measures do you support to reform financing of elections in Illinois, if any?
Well, I think the finance reforms that just occurred recently were absolutely counterproductive because it put more control into the hands of our legislative leaders. And that's exactly where the control doesn't need to be. So I think the reform that just occurred was absolutely counterproductive, and that should be repealed. As far as finance reform, I think the system should be as free as possible. And I think that people should be allowed to support the candidates of their choice.
Mr. Drury?
I think that Illinois could go a long way towards fixing the election process by moving to a public financed system where the candidates don't have to raise money. Give my opponent X number of dollars, give me X number of dollars, and we will have a race. Instead of accepting money from unidentified independent PACs that send out mail that doesn't really tell the truth about anything, I think we should go to public financing and just be transparent. I agree right now that the system allows party leaders to have too much control, and that's why in this election I have raised my money from you, from people like you. And despite what the comments are coming from my opponent, there's not $250,000. You can look at my 2013, 2014 filings and you won't see any dollars from Mike Madigan. You could look at my 2012 filings and you will see that I returned $20,000 to Mike Madigan. Did I have support during my first run from the Democratic Party? Absolutely. My opponent had more support from the Republican Party. Right now, my opponent's taking support from the Republican Party, and I'm not. I think if he's so serious about reform and where money is coming from, let him commit right now in front of all of us to giving that money back.
Okay, question 9 goes to Mr. Drury first. What is your opinion of the passage of an assault weapons ban that included most guns and a 10-round limit on magazines for pistols?
If I understand the question correctly, there were some assault weapons bans passed in the 58th District, and I'm proud to say that the 58th District has the most assault weapons regulations of any district in the state of Illinois, and I'm proud to say that's in large part because of the efforts of myself and our legislative office. I wish we would have got more in place, but I think we did a tremendous job, despite the NRA telling us that we wouldn't get any in place. People have a Second Amendment right to have guns. They don't have a Second Amendment right to have all of the guns that they want wherever they want and to murder and slaughter innocent children in our schools. And if assault weapons bans go ways towards eliminating that slaughter, then I'm absolutely for them. And I don't think that there's been anybody in the General Assembly who has been a bigger advocate of implementing responsible gun laws than I have been. And this is a big difference between my opponent and me. Again, I've opposed the concealed carry law and having guns at our beaches, our forest preserves, our restaurants. My opponent doesn't. I'm in favor of assault weapons bans and led the charge in our community to ban assault weapons. My opponent was silent on that issue, but maybe he'll let us know what he thinks.
Mr. Nierhoff?
I support the Second Amendment. I support the legal rights of gun owners. I'm also open to evaluating legislation that looks on putting more restrictions on people who have mental illnesses as well as criminals. With respect to assault weapons, the law that Mr. Drury encouraged took away a lot of weapons which many of us would not consider assault weapons. They're really hunting weapons. So I think he has gone over and above what needed to be done. I think we need to focus on where the problem is. And if you look at any of the recent mass shootings, it's pretty clear that those people were mentally ill. And I think that that's where we need to focus our efforts. And I will not take rights away from gun owners. Regarding that $20,000 that Mr. Drury gave back, that was right before the League of Women Voters last cycle. And yes, he did give that back. And then he subsequently accepted $158,000 from the Democratic Party, which is controlled by Michael Madigan. He is controlled financially by Michael Madigan.
Could you all check, please, that your phones or anything that beeps are off? Okay. All right. Question number 10 goes to Mr. Nierhoff first. Would you support an independent, computer-based redistricting of Illinois to decrease gerrymandering?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I better get on it to my next question. All right, the next question goes to Mr. Drury first. What is your position on whether a minor seeking an abortion must have her parents informed?
Illinois has a law, it's called the parental consent law, and the law is problematic because it requires children to always get the consent of their parent before seeking women's reproductive health services. And the problem with that is that not everybody has a relationship with their parents where they can go to their parent. And there's been tragic documented incidents. I believe one was in Minnesota where an honor student girl, an honor student woman in high school got pregnant, was embarrassed to tell her parents about what happened, went to a back alley abortion clinic, and subsequently died. There's other instances where the parent is the father of the child, and the person has to go and get consent from that parent. How does that really work? I believe that the system that was put in place, the law that's been enacted in Illinois, is a tragic law that jeopardizes women's rights, jeopardizes women's reproductive rights, and the state really has no right being involved in that situation.
Mr. Nierhoff.
I'm an obstetrician. I do D&Cs. I can tell you that with any procedure that you do, if you do enough of them, that there will be complications. So what would it be like if you came out of the operating room after doing a hysterectomy because of a perforated uterus and a young woman who was hemorrhaging, and you had to tell that father that I just needed to do a hysterectomy on your 16-year-old daughter to save her life. And, oh, by the way, she was pregnant. May there be cases that need to be addressed and exceptions that need to be addressed if the father is the father of the baby. Yeah, we need to be thoughtful about that. That is by far and away a rarity and an exception to the rule. It's not unimportant, but that's not what we're talking about here. If you do any procedure enough times, you're going to have complications. You need to consider what the implications are, not if, but when that happens.
The next question is to Mr. Nierhoff. And again, are there any questions waiting to be picked up or anyone needing blank cards? Okay. Do you think all guns should be banned from District 58? And do you think all guns should be banned statewide?
No and no. I support the Second Amendment. I support the rights of legal gun owners. Those aren't the people that I'm particularly worried about. I'm worried about criminals having guns. We have no control over that currently. I'm worried about mentally ill people having guns. We do an inadequate job of that currently. I'm not particularly worried about legal gun owners.
Mr. Drury?
I do not seek to ban all guns from the state of Illinois or from the 58th District, but what I do seek is responsible, sensible gun legislation. It's great to say that we're not concerned about the legal gun owners, but as a former federal prosecutor who worked on gun cases, I can tell you that every gun in the United States of America started out as a legal gun with a serial number on it that came off the presses. And those guns then find their way into criminals' hands. And the more illegal guns you have on the street, the more illegal guns you're going to have on the street. We need to have restrictions. We need to have laws that prevent straw purchasers, legal gun owners buying guns and then selling them out of their trunks to gang members who then go and kill each other. We need to have background checks so we know where the guns are and who has them to make sure that they're not just trading hands and getting into the wrong hands. It's very simple to sit here and say that I support Second Amendment rights, and I don't think anybody here opposes the United States Constitution. But we need to be responsible about it, and we need to follow what our courts say, and they have upheld the assault weapons bans that we put in place in the various communities here. And we need to make sure that we're keeping our communities safe. And all you need to do is pick up a newspaper on any day, pick up the Sun-Times or the Tribune, and you will see that we are not doing a good enough job of keeping our communities safe, especially our kids. Kids are being shot every week in Chicago, so much so that it doesn't even make the news sometimes. That is a sad statement about where our society has gone.
Okay, that concludes the question section of this forum. We will now move to closing statements. And by coin toss, Mr. Nierhoff goes first, and then Mr. Drury, 1.5 minutes. Thank you.
First of all, thank you to the League, and thank you all for coming today. I think we should stop hurting people. Doctors are trained to solve problems. Lawyers are trained to win arguments. I think that we should focus on solving the problems in Illinois rather than on winning arguments. I think we need a doctor in the House. There's never been a doctor elected to the General Assembly. That's in spite of Medicaid being our leading budget item. There's never been a doctor there, and I think that needs to change. If I am elected, I will focus on 3 things. Number 1 is bringing jobs back to Illinois by decreasing taxes and regulations. Number 2 is pension reform. That's fair both to the taxpayer as well as to our current employees and retirees. And thirdly is Medicaid reform that saves Illinois money, but more importantly provides care to the people who really need it. Illinois is in a lot of trouble, and we're coming to a crossroads. And if we don't change course, we're going to be in for a world of hurt. I am confident that with responsible leadership, that we can solve the problems that we face as a state. And I'm confident that we can make Illinois, once again, a great place to live, to work, and raise a family.
Mr. Drury.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time out of your days to attend this very important forum, and thank you to the League of Women Voters. I represent a new era of government in Illinois, one that's based on honesty, giving you honest answers and explaining my rationale for coming to the decision that I came to. There's a big difference between the new era that I represent and what my opponent is representing. We heard today, publicly, how he wants to, at one time, save pensions and cut pensions. We don't need that. People need to have certainty. Our businesses need to have certainty. That's the number 1 problem they talk to me about. Our citizens need to have certainty. And what my office has provided, what I've provided in the 2 years I've been in office, is that honesty and that certainty that is returning trust to government. I agree that we need to stop hurting people. And that's why I am pro-choice. I'm the only candidate in the race who's pro-choice. It hurts people to not let them make their own decisions about their health care, even when their health is in danger. I believe in responsible gun legislation because guns in the wrong hands hurt people, and we need to make sure that's not happening. I believe in getting health care to people who don't have access to it, because if we don't give them the health care they need, it hurts people. So the choice you have before you is, are you going to go along with the new era that we've brought in and make sure that it's here to stay, or are we going to have more of the same political speak that we've heard here today? I suggest we go with the new era.
Thank you. This concludes the 58th District State Representative Forum. We will reconvene at 2:20 with the County Clerks Forum. And if the 2 candidates for County Treasurer are in the room, if you would please come forward and see me for the coin toss. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. We have again done a coin toss to see the order of the opening statements. We are going to start with Ms. Wyckoff, and she has 1.5 minutes to start.
I'll talk fast. Good afternoon. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for providing this forum for us to present to you, and also with all the competing activities this afternoon, your attendance. I'll talk a little bit about the clerk's office and my qualifications. The four major areas of responsibility for the Lake County clerk are elections, vital records, property tax extensions, and also serving as the clerk for the Lake County Board. My qualifications, for the last 20 years I have been an assistant state's attorney in the Lake County State's Attorney's Office. The first 5 years as a criminal prosecutor, doing things ranging from traffic to a murder case. The last 15 years I have been in the civil division. One of my primary responsibilities was to serve as the legal representative for the Lake County clerk and the clerk's office. So with particular focus on elections and vital records. Prior to that, I spent 16 years at the American Medical Association, working in communications with the policymaking bodies, as a lobbyist in Washington, D.C. for 4 years, and also as a director of a division managing a staff and a budget. I have a bachelor's degree in communications and journalism from the University of Missouri, an MBA from Northwestern, and a JD from Loyola. I think all of these skills and this experience give me unique qualifications to serve as the Lake County clerk.
Ms. Kilkelly.
You know, I'm just like you. I care about Lake County. In fact, I come from the largest and most diverse community in Lake County, Waukegan, born and bred. And I am prepared and ready to serve all of Lake County. I'm Janet Kilkelly, and I'm running to be your next Lake County clerk. Now, as the clerk, I have a number of things I would like to do in that office. But first and foremost, be assured I will protect your right to vote. Everyone qualified to vote will have that opportunity under my administration. In addition, there's a number of core competencies we need to take a look at. Is the software able to accommodate the tax extensions for the TIF districts these days? I need to take a look at that. There's communities out there that are interested in that very much so. Also, is the software able to accommodate and protect your identification with the vital records? So there's a number of things I want to do. If it is an efficiently run office, it will save the taxpayers money. So I need your vote, and you can have the same old, or you can have me as your next Lake County clerk on November 4th. Thank you.
The first question goes to Ms. Wyckoff, but before that, if anyone has any questions, please write them down, hold up your hand. We have the time, I think, to get through quite a few. There's a gentleman here with a question to be picked up. Okay, the first question to Ms. Wyckoff and then Ms. Kilkelly. Beginning in November, there is a new provision which allows individuals to register to vote on Election Day. What are your thoughts about how this law may affect the election process?
It's difficult to tell how it will affect the election process until it's happened. But let me clarify, the provision in the law is not just broad, unrestricted voter registration on Election Day. A law was passed on the very last day of the legislative session that extends what we call grace period registration to the 4 permanent polling places in Lake County. Those are established by statute. They're the 3 largest municipalities in Lake County, plus 2 in Waukegan because of the population. So this will be extended voter registration just in those 4 places. People who vote during grace period registration on Monday and Tuesday, the Monday before election and Tuesday of Election Day, will receive a provisional ballot. Again, it's very difficult when something new like this has been passed to determine exactly what will happen. And in fact, the legislation specifically earmarks this program just to be in existence for the 2014 election. One of the things that I will do if I am clerk is be prepared for the possibility after the November 4th election is over this year that program may be extended into the future and include all of the polling places in Lake County.
Thank you. Ms. Kilkelly.
Well, I think that if there is a program in place to encourage people to vote, I'm all for it. I mean, number one, that is our democratic way of of going around. That is our God-given right in the United States, that we have that opportunity to vote. A lot of people don't get around to it, and I think that the same day is going to be a terrific boon. Right now we have, 12 to 15% of people who come out for voting? I think that's abominable. I mean, I would like to hear more about how we're going to get people to the polls. Now, I have a number of initiatives that I want to do when I am clerk, and they go from top to the bottom. It's initiatives for our young voters, it's initiatives for our new voters, it's initiatives for our senior voters to retain them, and also to take maybe a look at legislation for those homeless vets who are eliminated from the voting process because they do not have an address. So anything that helps people get out and vote, I'm all for it.
Thank you. The second question, we will start with Ms. Kilkelly and then move to Ms. Wyckoff. The question is, what would you do to improve constituent, candidate, and election services in Lake County?
To improve it?
Yes, to improve constituent, candidate, and election services.
I think first and foremost, it's one of my initiatives, and that's education. I would like to have on the clerk's website a listing of all the 2014 candidates with a hyperlink behind them that goes to a page that gives the basic information about the candidate. I find that all the time when I'm going door to door or going on a parade, people say, I don't vote because I don't know who they are. And this is the first stop that they can go to. They can go to the clerk's website. They can have that hyperlink that either goes to the clerk, goes to the candidate's website or not. If a lot of your candidates won't have a website, that costs about a couple $1,000s. But for those people who are running for school boards, running for sanitary districts, it'll be their first place for them to go so that individuals who may vote for them have information. So I think communication and education is our best value there.
Ms. Wyckoff?
The current Lake County clerk's office has been significantly modernized over the last 15 years that I've been there. There is a robust internet presence, the use of even Facebook and Twitter to disseminate information to taxpayers, candidates, and voters. I would continue that, expand that, and take advantage of new technology as it becomes more available, more sophisticated. A few years ago, we didn't even have Facebook. Who knows what the next generation will be? My other priority will be similar, actually, to Janet's. I have also been concerned about voter turnout. It was only in the primary this year that voter turnout was as low as 14%, although in off-year elections like November, historically, turnout has only been 50%. One of the things that I want to do, the county clerk isn't automatically responsible for voter turnout in Lake County, but I think it's a natural extension of that office to work with civic groups, community organizations to encourage participation. I also want to work with the schools and hope to work with Royce Lee Wood, who's the regional superintendent, and expand the existing programs that we have in high schools, for example, to use high school students as election judges. I'd like to see all of the high schools get much more involved in creating this lifelong habit of voting and election participation.
Thank you. The next question goes first to Ms. Wyckoff and then to Ms. Kilkelly. Do you anticipate an increase in voter registration as a result of new legislation expanding the time frame for registration? If so, what steps will you take to accommodate the increase?
I certainly hope it will increase voter registration. Actually, voter registration is not so significantly a problem. We have about 400,000 individuals in Lake County registered. And starting July 1st of this year, we went live with online voter registration. We have about 330 people who have registered online. I'm expecting that will expand, particularly among young people where we really want to get them involved and participating. I'm assuming that also on our election day registration for the grace period that we will expand that also. And I'm sorry, what was the second part of the question?
It says, what steps will you take to accommodate the increase, the time frame?
Well, certainly we, for example, we have a tremendous amount of promotion for this online voter registration. We have encouraged it. We've encouraged online voting this year. We've already seen 10,000 ballots being sent out for people to applications for ballots, and we've responded with ballots. So we've seen a huge increase in the number of people who are going to vote early, and that's been significantly promoted by the Lake County Clerk's Office.
Thank you. Ms. Kilkelly?
Again, I'm all for any increase, but I think what you have to ask is what is the true number of how many people are registered to vote? From what I understand, the death list, which is the death records, which is part of the clerk's job, they don't necessarily call that from the voting rolls. Now, when you have an election roll around, you're printing ballots for people who are dead. I think that that is something that is a waste of taxpayers' money. So I think that that would be the first thing I would like to take a look at to see what type of cycle that is so that you can make sure that we're not printing ballots for dead people. And I welcome any increase, and I think the clerk's office can certainly accommodate that.
Thank you. The next question goes first to Ms. Kilkelly. If elected, would you support a change? Actually, it doesn't matter if you're elected. Do you support a change to have voting on Sundays and lengthen the time of early voting days and the hours of early voting to include more prospective voters?
I think you have to take a look at it. I think as records will show, it is increasing each and every time the number of people who come out and do early voting. They find it convenient, and they really like that opportunity. So I think that that is something that we can, continue to do. The one complaint I've had is that people who come out for early voting then don't come on the day of voting, and then the people are looking at each other. So I'm not sure how to balance all that as of this moment.
Ms. Wyckoff?
One of the things when you increase the number of people voting early and also this vote by mail, it does help to streamline things in the clerk's office. It helps us to do a better job of predicting how many ballots to print, for example, which if it's more predictable, we can save money. This year, based on changes in legislation, there will be grace period registration and grace period voting on Sunday before the Tuesday of election. Anytime you increase the number of hours for early voting or grace period voting and registration, you need to keep in mind that that increases our equipment costs, the number of election judges that we have to have, staff available in the county clerk's office. So while it's significant to help people, and I am always in favor of encouraging voter participation, we do have to balance that with what the costs are and make sure that we can be responsible and efficient.
Thank you. Okay, the next question goes first to Ms. Wyckoff. Are you aware of places in Illinois or other states that do particularly well with clerk's office services? And I believe this is beyond just voting. What could we learn from them? What would prevent implementation of these best practices?
I have been so focused for the last 15 years on the Lake County Clerk's Office that I honestly cannot tell you what other clerks' activities specifically do. We certainly have some information from other counties around the state of Illinois. I think that our clerk's office is preeminent in its efficiency, its innovation in terms of technology, consolidation, and efficient polling places and locations on Election Day. I would hope to continue that tradition of excellence, transparency, efficiency, technological innovation into the future, and also just be flexible and be able to adapt to changes in technology that will help us streamline even further One thing that we're already, the Lake County Clerk's Office is already in the progress of doing, and which the new clerk will finalize and implement, is a whole new software system for the tax extension program that will be fully integrated with the treasurer, the assessor, and to some extent the Lake County recorder.
Thank you, Ms. Kilkelly.
The one idea I had about having the page about each candidate actually came from the state of Oregon. They actually do that for each candidate that they have in the state. My focus, of course, would be only to do it for Lake County because I think it would be a viable tool. I think we need to also to promote more with our young people. We have to promote voting among them. I really believe we lost a generation to voting. I mean, I'm not going to, soft pedal that. There's so many people who won't vote, refuse to vote, say the vote doesn't count. So we're going to have to just bypass them and go ahead and try and really enforce with our young voters that this is something that they do for life. Take it to college. Take it through your whole life. Just make sure that you're accountable and you get out there and vote. So I'm looking forward to doing that more, please.
Thank you. The next question goes first to Ms. Kilkelly. What should be the top priorities of the clerk's office?
The top priority to the clerk's office should be the software. There was a mention that there is going to be new software in place. Well, it's needed. It's long overdue. The TIF districts that most communities rely on for reinvestment of economic monies has not been done correctly over the last, who knows? Nobody knows. This is a problem in the clerk's office. So you have communities out there scrambling about their money. So this is long overdue. That needs to be in place. And I also want to make sure that on an annual basis, you take a look at the software. It needs to be in place to protect not only the calculations, but also your personal identity. We are keeper of the records. We want to make sure that your records are safe in the clerk's office.
I would respond briefly to the question about the TIF, the tax increment financing program that Mrs. Kilkelly is referring to. There is, as I said, the clerk's office is already working on a new software program for that entire tax extension program. The issue that I believe she is referring to has nothing to do with the software. It's a question of how the incremental increase between the base equalized assessed value and the incremental assessed value is calculated to determine what tax benefit will go to these TIF districts. There's a question really about the statute and how there are two methods to calculate that. And we have to look very carefully at the statute and determine what really the language is. I think in terms of expanding other software, one of the things that I want to do is be able to immediately anticipate, I mentioned briefly before, the possibility of having voter registration expanded to all of the voting locations on Election Day. If that does happen, I think we need to be prepared for that possibility. That will indicate an entirely new, very expensive, potentially, system for ballot-on-demand equipment that will be in every polling place. And I want to anticipate that, plan for that, and investigate all the possibilities to have that in place.
Thank you. The next question goes to Ms. Wyckoff first. When senior citizens stop driving, they lose driver's licenses. What would you do to assist these people in getting a state ID? Transportation is often the limiting factor.
As much as I would like to be able to assist, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
Oh. As much as I would like to be able to assist senior citizens, they are one of the most active groups of people in elections and voting, and we love them. They make up a huge portion of our body of election judges. We rely on almost 2,000 election judges a year. I don't know if, you have to look at what authority the Lake County Clerk has in the statute to get involved in activities like that. I don't know that the clerk's office would have the authority to get involved in transportation issues. Again, as the Lake County Clerk and just the position of the office, I would certainly encourage other organizations that have the authority and the resources to get involved in that. We do see other organizations and candidates and political parties working on getting elderly people to the polls on Election Day. There's no reason not to continue to encourage that. I don't believe that the Lake County Clerk, the way the statute reads right now, necessarily has the authority to do that.
Thank you. Ms. Gilkelly?
Can you say that question again?
Sure. When senior citizens stop driving, they lose driver's licenses. What would you do to assist these people in getting a state ID? Transportation is often the limiting factor.
Well, no, I'm not really sure. However, they should have a driver's license or a state ID. I mean, they just need it in their daily life, number one. But you hit upon something that is, again, one of my senior initiatives. We've all seen these assisted living facilities popping up all over Lake County. Now, the clerk does have in place a voting system for those who are in nursing homes, but they do not for those who are in assisted living. When I've been visiting the different assisted living facilities, most of the people who are there have not updated their driver's license or even have a driver's license anymore, nor have they updated their voter registration. So to me, I think outreach is necessary to do that on a quarterly basis because of the, just because of the nature of what a senior assisted facility is. So I would like to have an outreach that goes to all those in Lake County, to go to those to make sure that the seniors still have the opportunity to vote and to at least register them or update their information.
Thank you. Ms. Wyckoff, your closing statement, please.
Well, again, I really appreciate the League of Women Voters putting together this forum to allow us to talk and meet with you today. It has really been an honor for me to serve these last 20 years as an assistant state's attorney in Lake County. I have loved that position. So it was actually a difficult decision, but I do feel an enormous commitment to the citizens of Lake County, to our Lake County Clerk's activities, particularly our election system, and I believe that I have the qualifications to make a smooth transition to a new office and yet be prepared to face the challenges in the future. I think if you talk to people who have worked with me, there are other qualities that are important. I have integrity, a strong work ethic. I'm not afraid of a challenge. And I really look forward to serving the citizens of Lake County as its clerk.
Thank you. That concludes this portion of the forum for county.
Not me.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Hello.
Sorry. Excuse me.
John F. Kennedy once said, things do not happen, things are made to happen. And it is up to each and every one of us in this room to make this change in the clerk's office happen. Now, I'm going to protect your vote. I'm going to increase the voting rolls. I'm going to make sure the software is in place to protect your records. So you can stay with the status quo, or you can choose fresh eyes and somebody who's creative. So I'm looking forward to serving as your next Lake County clerk, but I can't do that without your vote. So vote for Janet Kilkelly on November 4th. And remember, I'm just like you. I care about Lake County.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. I apologize. It's the heat.
I didn't have anything to do with that.
It's okay.
We will reconvene at 2:50 for the County Treasurer's Forum. We are going to start on the forum for County Treasurer. This will be a 25-minute forum by coin toss. Mr. Stolman will go first with the opening statement, and you have a minute and a half. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. My name is David Stallman. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I am the Republican candidate for Lake County Treasurer. I'm married to Maureen, who's in the back, for 42 years. We have 2 beautiful children, 3 grandchildren. My professional background is University of Illinois, DePaul Law School, I've been an attorney, entrepreneur, businessman, and got elected to the county board in 1992. It's an absolute honor to serve my hometown, Buffalo Grove, parts of Long Grove, all the way out to Kildare, and also the unincorporated areas since that time. Prior to then, I was serving in Buffalo Grove's capacity on Zoning Board of Appeals. I had involvement with some of the schools as far as advisory curriculum committees. My most recent tenure is chairman of the county board. Let me tell you a little bit about what we did in the county board. I have had various leadership roles in the county board, having risen to a number of leadership positions, including chairman of finance. I was able to attain AAA bond rating for the county. Most recently, as county board chairman, I've reduced the expenses, $18 million one year, $12 million next year. We have a AAA bond rating. Bottom line is we have a balanced budget. And I'm running for this position to make sure that we keep it that way. I'm running for this position to make sure that there is employment within the county, and it's a great place to live, work, and raise your family. Thank you.
Mr. Ryback?
Thank you to the League of Women Voters for inviting us here today and all that have taken time to stay and listen to us and are missing the Bears game. I've been in public service over 20 years and am currently nearly ending my second term as Wadsworth Village President, or as most residents address me, Mayor. My phone number is always available to all of those constituents. I didn't consider myself a politician, but as an elected official dedicated to public service. When I agree to serve in a capacity on anything, it implies a commitment to remain active to the cause. Attendance at meetings is essential, and I'm pleased to report that I've missed only 4 village board meetings since 1993. Lake County is a great place to live and work, but many residents have remarked that the taxes are so very, very costly. I would consider assembling a Citizens Advisory Committee to help streamline the office, to reduce overhead and costs. We've successfully used this approach at the Solid Waste Agency, where I'm Executive Committee Chair, to arrive at our new 60% recycling goal for the near future, which I'm quite proud of. I'm an advocate of public service and envision more than just change. I see a chance for real reform for the first time in over 50 years. Did you know that the same family has held this office since the 1950s with only one non-family treasurer during the time period? We are facing a critical election.
Thank you. The first question will be answered first by Mr. Stolman. How might you facilitate working with the county clerk and supervisor of assessments who have to provide necessary data for efficient tax billing and collections?
I've worked with the county board. I've worked with all the various assessors, actually 18 assessors, over the last number of years, putting together budgets for the county. We have approximately almost a $500 million budget that I've worked on for approximately 20 years, including the Treasurer's Office. The fact of the matter is that the Treasurer's Office does a great job. Your question is really, what does the Treasurer's Office do? Let's go back for a quick second. It sends out about 250,000 bills. It collects about $2 billion worth of monies. It disperses those to the various 200 different levels of government and 18 different townships in the county. And it does it on a sometimes weekly basis, but technically it is required to do it on a monthly basis, and actually does it even more so than that. The office has been run by a gentleman by the name of Bob Skidmore, who is a tremendous individual, has run a great office. There has never been a scandal. It has been run efficiently and effectively, and I continue to pledge, to bring transparency to the job, to bring some technology to the job, to allow for investments, be prudent, to make sure that the money is properly preserved so that there's no embarrassment to taxpayers, and also earn a profit. I plan on bringing money managers into run so that we can pick up some interest. But the bottom line is preservation and collection of dollars and then disbursement of dollars in a quick fashion.
Mr. Ryback?
And you were seeking to answer to working with the...
How might you facilitate working with the county clerk and supervisor of assessments who have to provide necessary data for efficient tax billing and collections?
The Chief County Assessment Officer, of course, collects all of the books from all of the township assessors, reviews their work and assembles those figures. He then works with the county clerk, and as was mentioned here earlier, the county clerk has to extend those numbers and rates, and then, of course, the treasurer's office needs to disperse the bills to all the properties and the property owners and attempt to collect the, it was 1.7 billion, but it's closer to 2 billion at this point in history. I was going to make a point here. There's faster ways of doing some of these things as far as collecting and dispersing the funds. The county keeps its funding in many local Lake County banks. And so as part of that agreement, when they do that, the bank has to provide a quarterly report to the treasurer's office. I spoke to a banker recently of long standing who indicated he wanted to get into the 21st century and send the quarterly report electronically. However, the treasurer never responded to him, either by telephone call, email, or letter. So that's something I'd like to address, so there is interaction between the banks and the
Thank you.
treasurer.
The next question goes to Mr. Ryback first. What are the major challenges facing the treasurer's office, in your opinion?
Where do I start? There's a number of them. There is education to the public on their tax bills. Many people have asked me, why have tax amounts risen on the tax bills when property values have decreased so significantly? That's a concern of a lot of folks. That is all spelled out on each tax bill as far as what agency is assessing what amount. Some of the agencies are assessing large amounts, and they don't necessarily need to. And I can think of several that could assess something less than the maximum, but continue to assess that. And of course, that raises everyone's taxes.
Mr. Stillman.
For the last 4 years, I've actually been doing an outreach program, both not only in my district, but also throughout the county, along with assessors and also with Marty Paulson, who is the head of our taxes, if you will, basically our chief assessor. What we've been doing is we've been trying to educate people. Bottom line is I've been preaching for the last couple of years, and just recently, District 128 in Libertyville, I got phone calls from them saying, thank you, Mr. Stallman. What do you have to do as taxpayers? We're all taxpayers. We're all suffering. First of all, the taxes are high, but it's because of the schools. You look at your tax bill, anywhere between 70 and 80% for the most part are schools. What do you have to do? Every taxing body, and there are 200 taxing bodies throughout the county, from your townships to your park districts to your village to your library boards to your school districts, please attend those meetings. And when they're talking about budgetary constrictions or expenditures, please voice your opinion. 128 finally decided to listen. The school board reduced their operating expenses just like I did at the county, and actually they're thinking about giving a rebate. So the bottom line is what I'm planning on doing as far as Treasurer's Office is an outreach program that's going to be a continuing outreach program to reach out to, obviously, the taxpayers of Lake County.
Before I ask the next question, does anyone have questions waiting to be picked up? Does anyone need blank cards? Someone up front here, I think, needs a blank card. Thank you. The next question will go first to Mr. Stallman and then to Mr. Ryback. County funds are not allocated equally among municipalities, towns, and villages. County facilities, including forest preserves, receive the lion's share of county funds. Is this reasonable? If not, what would you do to fairly allocate county funds?
Well, whoever wrote the question is under misconception. They are separate entities. County Board, of which I'm a trustee, as well as the Forest Preserve Board are two separate boards, two separate books, two separate accounting systems. Everything is separate and apart. Monies that are allocated to forest preserves do not come from the county. County money are for county services, your roads, your health department, matters like that, but do not involve the forest preserve. Forest preserve dollars are coming from referendums that we as taxpayers paid to go out and obviously obtain open lands and bring more into the forest preserve system, and for operation expenses to make sure that those are maintained, as well as trails are open for the individuals. County funds are not expended to the forest preserve. There's a separate entity for forest rangers. There's a separate entity for sheriff's police. Everything is separate and apart, so it is not to be confused nor commingled.
Mr. Ryback? Was talking about the allocation of funds. It says county funds are not allocated equally among municipalities, towns, and villages. County facilities, including forest preserves, receive the lion's share of county funds. Is this reasonable? If not, what would you do to fairly allocate county funds?
And I'm not sure what the county funds are. The fund, and when in comparison to the village funds are basically predicated on what is levied by each village or community. That question is confusing. It's different taxing agencies have different rates, so the funds are distributed based upon the rates that are requested by the communities.
Okay. The next question goes to you, Mr. Ryback, to start with. What are the priorities of serving in the Lake County Treasurer's Office as the treasurer? So a list of priorities.
A list of priorities are to collect, make certain all the taxes are collected, that they are accounted for, that they are distributed to all of the taxing districts and distributed rapidly. I'd like to institute a program utilizing more modern technology that many of the banks use already, distributing funds electronically. It would go back to this banker that wants to submit his report electronically. He wants to speed up the process. The same way with the taxing districts. The schools and the other taxing entities need their funds in a short period of time, and they need to be distributed as quickly as possible.
Mr. Stolman?
I have been the physically responsible voice on the county board since 1992. The reality is, I think from the treasurer's perspective, there are certain constitutional requirements. Those will be adhered to. Beyond that, I want to do outreach programs. I want to have transparency, a greater transparency. I think the tax bill should be explained a little bit further. Your TIF districts, which was brought up earlier, there's really no explanation for that. I think through modern technology, there's a way of achieving efficiencies in the office. I am a proponent for economic development and will continue to be a voice for economic development. I help frame Lake County Partners, which is our economic development public-private partnership. I plan on continuing my progress with regard to making sure that we are shovel-ready, as we are from a county, that we're encouraging businesses to come here, and we are trying to make sure that businesses stay in the county. We are losing jobs. We have to put people back to work. So besides being a treasurer, and I promise to do all those faithfully, I will continue to do other things as well.
Thank you. I'm going to rephrase this question a little bit so it can be directed to both people. I believe we would go to Mr. Stolman first. Could each of you please make clear for the people here what your current position and responsibilities are?
Yes, I am a county commissioner. I do that full time. It is a part-time position. I have actually, since the time I was vice chairman of the county board, and especially since I was chairman of the county board, I have become basically a servant for the county. I equate it to 29 hours a day, 9 days a week, and the reality is my number has always been listed, but actually at this point in time I'm still a county commissioner representing Lake County, the bottom portion of Lake County, Buffalo Grove, unincorporated areas, areas of Long Grove, and again can serve as a Lake County commissioner as well as Forest Preserve commissioner. And again, it's a part-time basis.
Okay, Mr. Ryback?
My current position, as I mentioned, is the village president in Wadsworth, as also referred to as being the mayor. Along with that part-time position, I serve on a few other boards as well. On the Solid Waste Agency, I'm the vice chair of the board of directors, and I'm chairman of the executive committee. On the Lake County Stormwater Management Commission, I'm an alternate delegate. I was in 1999 to 2003, and I again continue in that capacity for the last several years. On the Lake County Municipal League, I was past treasurer, and I'm the current vice president. On the Lake County Council of Mayors, I serve as the vice chair, and also in that capacity, I serve as a member of the Council of Mayors serving the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, or also known as CMAP.
Okay, are there any further questions from the betters? No? If not, I'm going to move to the closing statements, and again, by coin toss, Mr. Ryback goes first.
In closing, my name is Glenn Ryback, the mayor in Wadsworth and a Lake County resident over 40 years. It's going to take more than just transparency for tax relief. Our values are dropping and the tax rate is rising. It doesn't make sense to many people that I've met. I spoke to a middle-aged lady recently who lived in Buffalo Grove and has for a long time. She observed the following: absolute control corrupts absolutely. It's going to take commitment, dedication, and more of that civic courage that you may have seen me promoting that's been missing for over 50 years of control by the same people doing the same thing over and over, leading to the second highest tax rate in the country. I seek your support in the upcoming election, and thank you for having me.
Mr. Stolman?
Thank you. My name is David Stallman. It's not Bob Skidmore. I'm not related to Bob Skidmore. He's not a cousin, not a distant relative. I was a county board chairman. I'm very, very proud of what I've been able to accomplish as a fiscally responsible voice since 1992. We have a balanced budget, which is unheard of. We are basically an oasis in Lake County. We have a strong economic team. We put together something called shovel-ready sites. We are looking and making pitches every single day to bring and retain businesses here so we were able to put people back to work. I was able to obtain a AAA bond rating years ago as chairman of finance. I helped create stormwater management. I helped create solid waste agencies. I've served on all those boards also. Bottom line is, I think from a treasurer's perspective, there's no one who knows the county system more than I do. I would be able to communicate well with the county board, with the clerk's office, and obviously with regard to Marty Paulson. Marty and I work very, very closely together. Bottom line is, for taxes, you have to go in and you have to let all of the taxing bodies know that you object to them spending. You can only spend what you can afford. If they reduce their budgets, the taxes will go down. If they don't reduce their budgets, the taxes will go up. It will have nothing to do with the value of your property. So that's, we've been out there outreaching and telling people that for years already. It's sad to say, but the bottom line is, yes, we are taxed high. It's basically for schools, and we're all very proud of our schools in Lake County. Thank you very much for everyone here. Thank you very much for the League of Women Voters putting this all together. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes our county treasurer. We have one last thing this afternoon, which is the regional superintendent of schools. Thank you, gentlemen. The regional superintendent of schools is running unopposed, and under league rules, people who are running unopposed candidates are given a couple of minutes to make a statement, because obviously there's not a second person to ask questions of. So I invite Ms. Wood to come forward if you are here, and great, thank you. And you have 2 to 3 minutes to make a statement, and you can choose to sit or stand as you will.
I have considered it a privilege and an honor to serve as your regional superintendent of schools for the last, actually I've been in the office 20 years, but 9 of those years I was the assistant regional superintendent, and the last 12 now, 11 to 12 that I've been the regional superintendent. I was elected in 2002 for the first time and re-elected in 2006 and 2010. It's privileged to work with the 45 school districts we have here in Lake County. This is a big county. We're the 3rd largest county in the state. 45 school districts, 221 school buildings. And prior to that time, I had worked with the North Chicago Public Schools for 22 years at all 3 districts, the high school district, the elementary district, and then the unit district. I have a master's degree, two degrees from Northwestern, a bachelor's degree in communication and a master's degree in education. And I have a certificate of leadership from the National Lewis University with the superintendent's endorsement. I'm a 46-year member or resident of Lake County. And, you know, the county has changed a great deal in the 40, actually I've been in education all that time too, and you can see the differences in the challenges and the diversity changes in terms of demographic changes. It's been a very interesting time. And I think the reason that I'm running again, and I'm not sure why I'm not opposed, except we do have to have credentials, which I just gave you. We have to be certified to do the job that they are asking you are asking for us to do. So that may be the case, I don't know. But one of the reasons is to preserve consistency and continuity. There are a lot of challenges. As I said, the state, we work closely with the State Board of Education. There are a lot of challenges that have come about with licensure, educational licensure for teachers and administrators. And we also do, health, life, safety visits in all of our buildings. Every year we do compliance visits to make sure everything is in order. They're doing everything the state and we're all asking them to do. A few minutes ago, Mr. Stallman said that we're all proud of our schools here in Lake County, and that's true. We are. I, for one, feel we have some of the wealthiest schools in the state, and we have some of the poorest, all in the same area. And we tend to try to work, we do work with all of them and try to get them to work together and to, work to help one another. And that's a big thing. So, indeed, I'm happy that I'm going to have another opportunity to continue and to provide that consistency and continuity in the year to come. And I look forward, we partner, all of us, there are 8 elected county officials in Lake County, and we all work together to make this a good county for you all to live in, and for us to work in.
Thank you very much.
So.
With that, I would like to thank the question bettors and the timekeepers. That you have been flawless, and this couldn't have happened without you. And I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Bradner to close this down for the afternoon.
Let's have a round of applause for Lolly Watt, who conducted this forum so well. The League appreciates your interest. We attempted to have a debate for the congressional candidates, but we're unsuccessful in doing that. Maybe next time. Thank you very much for coming. Please consider joining the League or passing a little donation in the jar on the way out. It does cost money to put these programs on. Thank you.